What's up, fellow autism? Happy 2015! I played a game and I want to talk about it. Before Neversoft got their big break with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, they developed a little-known running gun for the PlayStation called APOC.STR, a game that is somewhat forgotten and underlooked. I took a go at it and I have some things to say, but first, a history lesson. The development of the game started sometime in 1995. Activision was developing the game in-house, and initially the game was supposed to be sort of a buddy film type game. The player would take control of a mercenary while Trey Kincaid, an AI-controlled partner played by Bruce Willis, would help the player out along the way. Activision was able to get Bruce's voice and likeness using so-called cyber scanning and motion capture. Later on, Activision thought that hiring an A-list Hollywood actor to play the sidekick and not the main character was stupid, so they made him the main character. The game was intended to release in September of 1997, but it ended up being delayed and it somewhat went into development hell. Activision later passed on the project to an almost bankrupt Neversoft. At the time, Neversoft was known for developing Skeleton Warriors and the PS1 port of MDK, but they were also working on a game called Big Guns for Sony. The game, like Apocalypse, also went into development hell, changing its title to Exodus and having the game go through numerous design changes on behest of Sony. It went from a mech shooter to an action-adventure game starring a cat lady. That game ended up being cancelled in November of 1997. Neversoft later downsized to just 12 employees and they were desperate for any type of work. In early 1998, Neversoft showed off Exodus to Activision in hopes of them picking up the project, but Activision wasn't interested in the game. However, they were interested in the engine. They were looking for a developer to finish off Apocalypse, and Neversoft was their guys. They did it in 11 months, and the game was finally released on November 17th, 1998, to average reviews. But screw those guys, what do I think of the game? Well, sit back and relax, here's my review of Apocalypse. The game starts out with what looks like 4 burnt corpses strapped into a gurney, hooked up to whatever this wizard dude is. This dude is the Reverend, and he's hell-bent on reviving the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: death, plague, war, and the beast. Apparently they couldn't get the rights to Famine, the real 4th horseman of the apocalypse. Take 2 strikes again. After that orgy, we're taken to the Paradise Island prison facility and we have our man Trey Kincaid sentenced to death for shit-talking the Reverend or something. Trey gets thrown into a prison cell and his cellmate comes in, looking like he wants to have some fun with Trey, if you know what I mean. And then suddenly he gets shot even though Trey isn't even holding a gun? I don't know how that works. And then he goes to the sink and somehow materializes a rifle, which is his get-out-of-jail-free card.
Welcome to paradise.
Alright, now that we're in the first level, let's talk about the gameplay. What's cool about Apocalypse is that the game is a twin-stick shooter, taking full advantage of the DualShock. The left stick lets you move, and the right stick lets you shoot. Honestly, it's pretty nice, and it feels great, but while you play, you notice that sometimes you can't aim worth shit. You have almost 360 degrees of movement in terms of aiming, but doing that precisely doesn't really work. 50% of the time, you'll just miss and miss and miss. And a lot of the times, you don't even know if you're even hitting anybody. It's worse if you don't have a DualShock. You'll have to shoot with the face buttons, and because of that, you have less freedom of movement. Regardless, the moment you start out, you're like a badass, shooting everything on sight. It's very fast-paced for sure. Everything's exploding, there's blood everywhere, body parts are flying, and my ADHD can't contain itself. This game is also a platformer, a really janky platformer. You jump with R1 and you gotta pray to God you land on the platforms without falling into the pits of death. It gets really troublesome, especially if the game starts to chug. I'll get into that a little later. The camera also doesn't help. You can't move it at all, and essentially, it's on rails. The camera changes depending on the area you're in. Sometimes it'll be behind you, sometimes it'll go to the side, and sometimes it'll zoom out really, really far, turning you into a blob of pixels, making platforming even more difficult. The worst thing about the camera is when it changes direction while you're jumping from platform to platform, and when it does that, it's possible that you'll miss your jump and fall to your death. And also, it can really fuck with your depth perception. There has been several instances where I end up slipping off a platform when I don't even realize it, because you can't tell if there's a gap between the wall and the platform, so you fall off and have to climb your way back up. It's really frustrating. Along the way, you get more weapons. You start out with your rifle, which has infinite ammo. There's pickups you can pick up to add to your inventory. There's a rocket launcher, homing rockets, a flamethrower, a pulse rifle, some grenades, an electric gun called the Rip Laser, and a particle beam. They deal various amounts of damage, some more than others depending on the enemy. There's also the smart bombs, useful for taking out a group of enemies in your vicinity. Graphically, the game looks decent. It's not eye-popping or anything, but I like some of the aesthetics that the game was going for. It's very dark and cyberpunk-y, but the performance leaves a lot to be desired. There's moments in where the game goes into the single digits, and there's other times where the game just freezes for a moment. I feel like my PS1 is about to explode or something, but that's just how it is, I guess. The level design is pretty good, all things considered. The first level is the prison. It's your typical futuristic prison. Now, I've never been to prison, so I'm not sure if this is accurate or not. The level is really linear. You mostly go into a straight line with the camera guiding you along the way. It makes it feel like the game is an on-rail shooter or something. Every level has a boss, and the prison boss is this giant tank spitting out fire. The tank is pretty easy to beat. Just stay far away from it, pick up the items, and just keep blasting the tank until it blows up. After that, we take a hover bike out of the prison, somehow. Trey crashes it, somehow, and ends up in the sewers, somehow. The sewers is full of water, as you expect, but you also have to mow down hillbillies that throw grenades and avoid spiky blue balls and fire. After a while, you end up platforming on some huge ledges in an underground area, somehow. These are probably the most realistic sewers I've seen in a video game. You gotta be careful here. The aforementioned camera zooming out can make platforming difficult, and you also have to avoid falling rocks that will take out your health in a snap. Oh yeah, there's lava here too, somehow. Have we reached the Earth's core or something? Like, what the hell? You also end up fighting giant sewer rats. I guess that's somewhat fitting. The boss here is an alligator or a crocodile. I don't know, they all look the same. It's another easy boss. Shoot at him when he pops out of the water and you're done. Once you take out the alligator or crocodile, Trey just kind of stands there. Next cutscene, Trey is climbing a ladder to get to his apartment, and somehow that goes into a shower full of naked ladies, and Trey is very horny.
Nice polygon.
Eventually, Trey sees himself on the news and makes a run for it. The next level is the city, and this level is pretty big. Finally, we're not stuck in a cave or something. Right off the bat, we got System of a Down playing. Hell yeah, this fucking rocks! Oh, really? That's all I get? What a disappointment. Anyways, the rest of the level is pretty chaotic. You're taking down a lot of the police force who is really hell-bent on destroying you. They don't even give a shit about your rights.
Forget his rights, just shoot him!
Wow, it's just like real life. One cool thing about this level and some of the others are the video billboards playing music videos. I thought this tech was pretty cool for the time. It was so good, it was later used in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. That's how great this is. Somehow there's lava pits here. What kind of city is built above lava? The tanks come back, and just like Boss 1, they're really annoying to take out, and you have to deal with more than one, which sucks. There's a segment in where you ride on flying taxis, and it kind of reminded my friend Ivan of the movie The Fifth Element, which also starred Bruce Willis. It might even be a reference, as the movie came out a little over a year before the game did. The bosses here are 2 tanks. Yay, more tanks. After we take care of that, we then cut to Trey spraying and praying on some goons that are right in front of him, and then he gets on an elevator, only to face the same goons again, with one guy saying fuck it and he walks out of the frame. He's not even shooting, he's just pretending to shoot. We then find our buddy Larry the Scientist, but uh-oh, he's not Larry the Scientist, he's Larry the Death. Yeah, he's Death. Death is another easy boss. You just keep shooting at him until he dies while trying to avoid radioactive zombies. As you keep shooting at him, more of the lab starts to crumble around you, and you keep on going until he dies. Larry leaves us one last gift, somehow activating the lab's self-destruct button. Trey escapes the only way he knows best, by jumping out of a window. He somehow manages to survive, only to be caught by a police helicopter. We now start the next level, the rooftops. The rooftops is very similar to the the city. The police force is still out to get you, and you still don't have any rides. Honestly, this somewhat reminds me of Spider-Man 2000. I don't know why, yeah, it just does. You're basically jumping from rooftop to rooftop, shooting everyone on sight like usual. I don't got a lot to say about this, but I do like the design and look of the level. It's also very pleasing to see that it's not on fire and lava isn't everywhere. This level has some tricky jumps that are sometimes easy to mess up, so be careful, will ya? This level introduces wires so that you can traverse across 2 buildings. Unfortunately, shooting is broken when you do this. You can't aim at your enemies. Also, despite how massive and visually impressive this level looks, the game does lag a lot here, especially when there's a lot of enemies on screen. Just a small price to pay for greatness, I guess. The boss here is a helicopter. I thought this was pretty easy. Just shoot at it until it explodes. See a pattern here? The homing missiles and the pulse laser really speed things up. Next cutscene, the president is basically addressing the nation, basically saying, Trey Kincaid is the criminal. He should be brought to justice. We should kill him for disrespecting our Lord and Savior. Back in my day, we killed people who did that and they just don't do that anymore. It's such a shame. We have to kill Trey. We just have to. And then Trey decides to lay low for a while and visit his rock star ex, Mary Magdalene, who is somehow putting on a concert at a graveyard, which is our next level. It doesn't even look like a graveyard. It just looks like it came out of medieval or something. There's not much to say here. There's time platforms, wolves, and the hillbillies have been replaced by clown-faced punks. This was one of the levels that I found quite annoying. I just kept falling off the platforms for some reason, and it really pissed me off. I know, skill issue. There's no boss here. All you have to do is push a button and wait for the door to open, all while trying to get the punks away from that button. It's really annoying because you have to deal with those guys and zombies. It feels like it never ends. And before that, you have to rush through more zombies and punks, plus the wolves. There are no health pickups around this area either, so if you're at low health before you get to the door, you're pretty much screwed. Anyways, Mary is putting on the concert, doing the Disney legs, and Trey decides to talk to her after her set.
Trey Kincaid, I'll be damned. Was it you who crashed the chopper out front?
That's not a chopper, baby. It's a hover bike.
Where did you get this motorcycle?
It's not a motorcycle, baby. It's a chopper. Come on.
Trey tries to apologize for not being a good man to Mary, and then Mary starts being all kinky and seductive, revealing herself to be Plague. This is probably my favorite boss fight in the entire game. You're in the crowd shooting at Plague, all while jamming out to an absolute banger of a song. Fun fact, Mary, aka Plague, is played by the singer Poe, who contributed an early version of her song Control, later featured in her second album, Haunted, released in 2000. But the version on Haunted is not the same as the version on Apocalypse, and honestly, I think the version on Apocalypse is a lot better than the version on Haunted. That's not to say that the version on Haunted is a bad song or anything. I just feel like the one on Apocalypse is more badassery or something like that. By the way, if anyone has a FLAC of the Apocalypse version, please send it to me, ENunnProductionsinc@gmail.com or my Discord. Thanks. Back to the boss fight. Plague hops around the stage, shitting out sonic waves, and then a giant disco ball comes down, spitting out fire. So you gotta avoid the fire and shoot Plague at the same time. After you deal enough damage, the platform breaks, you hop on stage, and Plague spits out toxic green goo while you're singing the lyrics to Control. And then you finish her off. After all that mess, Trey finds out who's making the weapons the enemies have been using, so he ends up going to the Warfighters headquarters and tries to become Luigi.
What's going on out there?
Candy Graham.
The douchebag CEO escapes, and then we're led into the next level, the War Factory. We start the level by falling, and then you wreak havoc on these robots that can deal a lot of damage really quick. Honestly, it's best to use the flamethrower on them. This level has some annoying parts, like this one in where you're taking out endlessly spawning robots. There's also this floating block segment. It's really easy to slip off and fall because of the tricky platforming. You also have to deal with more lava and more bullshit platforming. You have to be really careful here. It's super easy to miss the platforms. I know I keep bringing this up, but you have a limited amount of lives, so getting a game over is really easy. And if you get a game game over, you have to start the level from the beginning. After the level is done with, we get a cutscene where Trey shoots a smiley mite onto a flying ship, blowing it up. But the CEO survives and reveals himself to be War. Now we're at another boss, and man, we started out at the top of the roof and now we're somehow at the very bottom of the earth. Just think about it. Trey took an elevator to the CEO's office, then he fought his way through a factory, got to the top of said factory to blow up a ship, and then he decides to go to the streets to make sure that this guy is dead. I mean, do you see all this lava? He must have had quite a trip if you ask me. Anyways, the boss fight isn't too crazy, but it is challenging. You start off by shooting the turrets off the downed aircraft. Be careful because they can take you out very quickly. After that, the ship blows up and War comes out shooting homing missiles at you. You shoot at him, he grows big, and then you run like hell while he chases after you. The trick here is to shoot at the barrels so that it trips him up so he doesn't come and crush you. After that, you do some backwards platforming, you pick up rockets, and then you shoot at him until he's dead. And that's War for you. After that's done, we see Trey engulfed in flames as he smells another horseman, and then we see the president acting all kooky. Somehow that leads us to the White House, and Trey decides to go in there guns blazing like he always does. You try to get past some turrets and goons, blow up some doors, and then after a while you see the White House. Hey, this looks like Trump's presidency so far. There's a huge lava pit surrounding the White House for some reason, and this part right here really pissed me off. First off, there's a ton of enemies. Second, there's turrets all around the corners and they'll drain your health in a snap. The platforming here sucks. The ledges end up being destroyed while you're on it, so you fall into the lava. It's a beginner's trap. You basically have to wait it out. Wait till the ledge is destroyed, jump over the gap, wait until the next ledge is destroyed, and so on. There's that, and sometimes you can't even grab onto this opening ledge. It's bullshit. After you make it past all of that, you go inside the White House, take out the Secret Service, take out a helicopter, do some very touchy platforming with no thanks to the single-digit frame rates, go into this giant cavern full of volcanoes, by the way, which is somehow underneath the White House, and then somehow end up in the Oval Office. Overall, the level is great, probably one of the best in the whole game, but the platforming ruins it. Final boss time! We're taking on the president who reveals himself to be the last horseman of the apocalypse, the Beast. This boss fight has multiple stages. You start out in the Oval Office, shooting at him until his life meter goes down, then the walls get destroyed, revealing more lava pits. You then try shooting at him until his life meter goes down. Again. This time you should try to pick up as many items and health pickups as you can. You really need them. Then after that, he starts to destroy the floor and you do the same thing as before. Then he destroys more of the floor, you do the same thing, and then he just does what he did the first time around and you get the idea. This was tough, not necessarily because of the boss itself, but again, the platforming and the lag rears their ugly heads. It's really easy to slip off the platform and die. It sucks, but you gotta time your jumps, especially in the last phase of the fight and where the floor is almost completely destroyed. If you're not careful enough, the platform you're standing on will collapse if you're not off it in time, so you gotta be constantly moving. And if you manage to do all that, you pretty much beat the game. In our last cutscene, the Reverend reveals himself and possesses Trey. The end.
Welcome to paradise.
I wonder if the buddy film part of the game was kept, would we have fought Trey? I guess we'll never know. Well, what do I think of Apocalypse? I had a ton of fun with the game despite my rage. The levels are great, mostly. The soundtrack is kick-ass and it looks fine, but the touchy platform leaves a lot to be desired and the frame rate is just god-awful. The story felt really rushed and unfinished, but that was because they chopped off the cutscenes that included the original protagonist. If they spent a little more time on this game, I think it would have been paced better, but alas. I do wish Bruce Willis had more lines too. Most of what he says are cheesy one-liners.
Damn, I feel good.
Overall, I'm not sure if this is a hidden gem per se, but it does suck that this game is really underlooked. This is what birthed Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and without this game, I don't think we would be where we are today, that's for sure. I think it's worth trying out, just try not to rage, will ya? Apocalypse for the PlayStation gets a 3 out of 5.
Ooh, that felt good.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. And if you did, give this video a like. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. If you're looking for more ENunnGaming, check out my review of Mary-Kate and Ashley Magical Mystery Mall, a game that makes me want to go shopping at the mall with my girlfriends. Okay, not really. Have a good one, y'all, and I'll see you soon. Bye.